Chapter 11, The Beginning of Life and Childhood. The learning outcomes for Chapter 11: discuss family history as a predictor of disease risk, identify appropriate uses for DNA testing, and explain how such tests might lead to genetic discrimination, define genetic engineering and explain why cloning and stem cell research are controversial issues, explain the 3 possible remedies for couples experiencing infertility problems, list those laws affecting health care that pertain especially to children's rights. These are the key terms for Chapter 11. Here are more key terms for Chapter 11. Genetics and heredity. So heredity is the science that deals with how organisms pass genetic traits onto their offspring, while genetics deals with the natural differences and resemblances among organisms related by descent. So basically what people look like. DNA is the combination of proteins called nucleotides that is arranged to make up organisms' chromosomes. A gene is a tiny segment of DNA found on a chromosome within a cell's nucleus. And a genome is all the DNA in an organism, including its genes. The Human Genome Project was funded by the U.S. government, and that is where the U.S. government and a bunch of other countries work together to map out the human genes in the body. So that took about 10 years for them to complete. We have different types of testing when it comes to DNA. So we have predictive testing, and we are checking to see if there are genes present that could pass on diseases that are hereditary. We have carrier testing, and that's to determine if individuals carry harmful genes that could be passed on to the offspring. We have prenatal testing, and that helps us to be able to look at genetic disorders in utero. So they can use ultrasounds or other non-invasive tests. Then we have pre-implantation testing, and that's where we look for harmful genes in embryos after artificial insemination, but before they're implanted into the mother. Then we have forensic testing, and that's to help with crimes, victims of crimes, looking for hair follicles, DNA. Then we have newborn screening tests, and those are the regular tests that are performed to check for any conditions or diseases that could be harmful that the child is born with. We have tracing lineage, and that's testing the percentage or relationship from one family member to another, or race or nationality, ethnicity to another. And we have diagnostic testing, and that's where DNA can be used to confirm a diagnosis of a certain condition. And last but not least, we have medical treatment determination, and these types of tests look for changes in the genes that can dictate how medications might process in that individual's body. Genetic discrimination. So these laws are placed into effect to protect people from being discriminated against due to their genetics. So there's HIPAA, and that is to protect their information from being leaked, so keep everything confidential when it comes to health. The ADA, so Americans with Disabilities Act, and that is to protect people from being discriminated against due to their disability. We have GINA, and that's the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, and that is to prevent health insurers and companies from discriminating against people in the workplace. And then we have the ACA, which was part of your paper, the Affordable Care Act, and that basically guarantees that even if someone has a genetic issue or a difference, they can still receive health care. They can't be kicked off of their health insurance. Genetic engineering. So that's where the DNA within the cells of plants and animals and other organisms are manipulated. So they use synthesis, alteration, or repair because we want to make sure the harmful traits will be eliminated, and we want to keep the positive traits as far as keeping humans or plants or animals healthy. but it can be controversial because we don't know what the side effects of messing with genes will have on the environment or on humans. Cloning, so it's the process used to create an exact genetic replica of another cell, tissue, or organism, and this is controversial. So yes, cloning does happen. However, when it comes to human cloning, it can't be a public thing because people have religious objections, people have moral objections, people also have scientific objections. But we do have food cloning, we have animal cloning right now that is public. So it's something that is going to grow more and more, but it is something that will be something done by the government, like the National Institutes of Health. They've done some cloning, and the Department of Health and Human Services. There's probably a lot more other departments that have done different types of cloning. It's a way of seeing if we can also keep the human race living longer, despite like all these illnesses that are popping back up. So we have different types of cloning. There's gene cloning, and that's where we want to have the sequence of the genes. So how are these genes formed? And then how could we remove harmful genes or add the good genes? Or if we could delete some of it or just change them around somehow to benefit humans. We also have therapeutic cloning, and there's 3 different types of cells that are used. So stem cells are from babies, and the adult cells can turn into any type of cell. Multipotent stem cells can be found in adult blood-forming tissue, but it can only become a certain number of things or certain type of organs. However, the pluripotent stem cells, which are found in embryonic tissue, that can become a plethora or many different types of cells. So it could grow into different types of organs, skin, your heart, eyes. So that's why they're experimenting with these different types of cloning. They also do xenotransplantation, and that's basically where you're taking animal organs and you're transplanting them into humans. So with pigs, like with their heart, we might use pig valves on someone's heart. Also for pig enzymes as far as digestion to help with human enzymes if they're lacking them. And the NIH is still growing human organs inside certain animals, and that is because we have a shortage of organ donation. There are some objections to genetic engineering because cloning doesn't always yield viable offspring, so that just means that the offspring or the children of whatever is being cloned might not live as long or might not survive. 30% of clones are affected with large offspring syndrome and other conditions that can be debilitating, and that is where they'll have organs that are too big for the body of the clone, or they'll sometimes, on the other hand, look at have organs that are too small as one of the other debilitating conditions. They also could be born without brain stems or their heart not working properly. So there's a large failure rate in human clones, and that would be unacceptable because people would view it as lives being taken because they would be experimented on. And many clones die prematurely, so they die early, and then scientists do not know how cloning of the body will affect the mind. Gene therapy can be helpful for treating harmful genetic diseases or traits so we don't pass them down to our children. So there's different ways to apply this process. They can try to eliminate certain genes that are bad. They can try modifying them, maybe adding to the gene or taking off part of the gene that is too much. They can also try turning off these harmful genes or replacing them with good genes. Infertility. So it's a time period of at least 12 months or longer where a family or a couple or an individual is having an issue with conceiving. Options for infertile couples. There's in vitro fertilization, and that's where fertilization takes place outside of the woman's body and is in a test tube. Artificial insemination is where semen is mechanically injected into the woman's vagina. And then surrogacy is where a woman is baking a baby for another woman. So this woman is going to bear the child. This woman is going to carry the child. Rights of children. Parents patriae is a legal doctrine that gives the state the authority to act in a child's best interest. So that is where the state may take over a child due to a neglectful situation or an abusive situation. The best interest of the child concept is an alternative that best safeguards the child's growth, development, and health. And newborns are considered to have the same rights as any other citizen, no matter their age. Abandoned infants. So there are safe haven laws which allow people to abandon their infant at a designated safe facility without penalty. So that would be like a fire station, a hospital, a police station, but the mother is supposed to walk up to, say, a police officer or a nurse or a doctor and hand their baby, their newborn, to the person and then let them know that I just had this baby and I do not want it, and they're able to walk away without penalty to themselves. Also, in Kentucky, we have the drop boxes, and also in Indiana, and that's where you can leave a baby without any penalty, and so it sets off an alarm to alert the hospital and the police station to come check on the child. It keeps them warm and it keeps them cold. And yes, it does sound terrible. However, children were left frozen in many places, so this was like a temporary solution to handle the issue, since people aren't always following the safe haven laws. Minors. Mature minors are individuals in their mid to late teens that are considered mature enough to give informed consent, while emancipated minors are those in their mid to late teens who legally live outside of their parents' or guardians' control. And they also received a judgment from a judge stating that they are considered emancipated and they are considered an adult in their full right and able to make their own decisions. Usually in these cases, they are children that have been abused or come from abusive situations or of neglectful situations. They have to get a sponsor, a counselor, be in school, and then also hold a job, and then live in their own apartment